Chemical reactions and equations. In this module, we will study about chemical reaction, chemical equation, balanced chemical equation, combination reaction, decomposition reaction, displacement reaction, double displacement reaction, and oxidation reduction reaction. Introduction. You might have observed many chemical changes in daily life, such as the formation of curd from milk, rusting of iron, burning of crackers, rotting of fruits, etc.
Let us study one of these changes. If we place an iron nail in the moist atmosphere for some time, what will be the observation? Corrosion. Corrosion of iron is, in fact, the conversion of iron metal into iron oxide due to the action of moist air. Corrosion of iron is an example of chemical reaction.
Let us study about the chemical reaction.
Let us observe the changes that occur during the burning of a magnesium ribbon. When a magnesium ribbon is burnt, it gets converted into white powder. This white powder is magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is formed by the reaction of magnesium with the oxygen of air. The process that leads to the transformation of one set of chemical substances to another is called chemical reaction. Chemical substances that take part in a chemical reaction are called reactants, and the substances formed in the reaction are called products. If we use the chemical symbols and chemical formulae to represent the reactants and products, then the above-mentioned chemical reaction can be simply written as an equation. The equation that represents the chemical reaction is known as chemical equation.
Chemical reaction is the phenomenon which brings a permanent change in substances, whereas chemical equation is symbolic representation of chemical reaction. Let us study about the chemical equation.
This animation will help us to understand what is a chemical equation and how to write a chemical equation. Chemical equation is the symbolic representation of chemical reaction. The representation of a chemical reaction with the help of chemical symbols and formulae of substances involved in it is called chemical equation. Let us take an example to understand the meaning of chemical equation clearly. Hydrogen reacts with oxygen to form water. Now we can change this word equation into a chemical equation by writing the symbols and formulae of the various substances in place of their names. In this chemical equation, the substances on the left side of the equation are called reactants, and the substances on the right side are called products. Plus sign is written between two reactants or products. An arrow separates the reactants and products in order to show the direction in which the reaction is taking place. Let us count the number of atoms of oxygen and hydrogen on both the sides of the equation. The number of atoms of hydrogen is 2 on the reactant side and 2 on the product side. Similarly, the number of atoms of oxygen is 2 on the reactant side and 1 on the product side. It means that the number of atoms of oxygen is not the same on both the sides. Therefore, this is an unbalanced chemical equation. Such a chemical equation is known as skeletal chemical equation for a reaction. According to the law of the conservation of mass, the number of atoms of each element must be equal in reactants and products. Therefore, the equation must be. Now again, count the number of atoms of hydrogen and oxygen on both the sides. This time there are 4 hydrogen atoms on the reactant side and 4 hydrogen atoms on the product side. 2 oxygen atoms on the reactant side and 2 oxygen atoms on the product side. Therefore, this is a balanced chemical equation. Here, G and L in bracket are the physical states of the reactants and products. G stands for gaseous state and L stands for liquid state.
Now, let us try to identify the reactant and product in the following reaction. In chemical equation, molecular formulas of reactants are written on left-hand side and that of products are written on right-hand side. Hence, magnesium and oxygen are reactants, whereas magnesium oxide is product. Let us study about the balanced chemical equation.
A chemical reaction is balanced when the number of atoms of each element on both the sides of the arrow is equal. A balanced chemical equation tells us about the formula, symbols, names, and physical states of the reactants and products, the relative number of atoms and molecules of the reactants and products participating in the reaction, the ratio of the moles and masses of the reactants and products, the ratio of the volumes of the gaseous reactants and products.
Information conveyed by chemical equation are: it tells us about symbols, names, and physical states of reactants and products. It gives information about relative numbers of atoms and molecules. It gives ratio of moles, masses, and volume. The chemical equations are balanced to satisfy the law of conservation of mass in chemical reactions. The reaction between hydrogen and chlorine to form hydrogen chloride can be written as: total atoms of reactants are 2 hydrogen and 2 chlorine. Total atoms of products are 2 hydrogen and 2 chlorine. Therefore, we can say that the number of various types of atoms in reactants must be equal to the number of the same type of atoms in products. There are certain symbols which are used in a chemical equation. S stands for solid state. L stands for liquid state. G stands for gaseous state. AQ stands for aqueous solution. Downward arrow stands for precipitate. Upward arrow stands for escaping gas. And delta stands for heating. It is time to understand the difference between subscripts and coefficients with reference to their usage for representing chemical equations. The subscripts tell you how many atoms of a particular element are in a compound. The coefficient tells you about the quantity or number of molecules of the compound. Let us understand by this example. C means 1 atom of carbon. O means 1 atom of oxygen. O2 means 1 molecule of oxygen consisting of 2 atoms of oxygen. CO means 1 molecule of carbon monoxide consisting of 1 atom of carbon attached to 1 atom of oxygen. CO2 means 1 molecule of carbon dioxide consisting of 1 atom of carbon attached to 2 atoms of oxygen. 3 molecules of carbon dioxide, each consisting of 1 atom of carbon attached to 2 atoms of oxygen. Now we will study about some advantages of chemical equations. Representation of chemical reaction becomes easy. Helps in knowing the effect of temperature, pressure, and concentration on reaction rate. Can be understood by chemists all over the world, irrespective of their language. Let us see how can we balance a chemical equation.
This animation will help us to understand how to balance a chemical reaction by hit and trial method. In marshy areas, plant matter rots. Gas called marsh gas.
Now, let us try to balance the given reactions. Zinc plus sulfuric acid forms zinc sulfate plus hydrogen. Methane plus oxygen forms carbon dioxide plus water. Magnesium plus oxygen forms magnesium oxide. Sodium plus water forms sodium hydroxide plus hydrogen. The balanced chemical equations are written as follows.
Types of chemical reactions: combination reaction, decomposition reaction, displacement reaction, double displacement reaction, oxidation reduction reaction.